Hi everyone! I'm excited to share with you the books that I got from the Big Bad Wolf book sale here in Dubai. It was from the 10th to the 20th of October. My friend and I went there twice, and the first time I got 11 books, and the second time I only got one book because we went back mostly for the chocolate dipped churros, and they had a stall there. So, if you love books, picture books specifically, then join me as I tour you in the books that I got from the Big Bad Wolf. So this is the first book that I got. It's entitled I Don't Like Koala. I when I saw this on one of the tables, I couldn't help smiling because of the emotions of the illustrations, and if you flip through the pages you can see all the characters' emotions. The little boy's emotions I love, but I love the koala's emotions as well because you can't really see it on his face or her face. I think it's a he, so let's just use his. You can't really see the koala's emotions on his face, but on the way that he's standing or sitting or on how his head is tilted. You can see the emotions from there. And I love that the background is just white, but the illustrations are scattered on the page, and I love the texture on the illustration. I love the colors. I love the shadows. I don't really know how to do shadows on my illustration, so this is a good inspiration. And this page I specifically love. I love that it's a full page of the koala's face. It's not even the entire face, it's just half of his face. And I love the textures, the illustrations, and the I think it's a pencil texture. I love that it's charcoaly, the charcoaly illustrations. I love the sketch illustration, and I love that on each page there are several illustrations to show the images for two statements or three statements, like taking a bath, putting on his pajamas, brushing his teeth. But look at all the details that went into each of this illustration. And this page I love specifically specifically because there are just three statements, and look at all the illustrations, like where he hides the koala: inside a pot, under the sofa, on top of the fridge, inside the bag, among his toys, inside the laundry basket, and the other one is what's that? I think behind the plant. And then I also love the colors and how it was rendered. I love the sketchy illustration. I love sketchy illustration. I'm not really gravitated towards perfect lines and perfect colors within the lines. I'm more gravitated. I'm more. I like illustrations more that are. I like English. I like illustrations that are more sketchy and not so perfect, but shows a lot of emotions and character. So that's the first book that I got. Next. This one is my favorite, primarily because it is illustrated by Oliver Jeffers, my all-time favorite illustrator. He is the reason why I started collecting picture books and started learning how to illustrate for picture books. This is not written by Oliver Jeffers. Most of the books that I have by Oliver Jeffers are also written by him, but this one is written by Owen Colfer. If you're familiar with the Artemis Fowl book series, he's the same writer. I was so happy when I saw this because the last time that I went to Big Bad Wolf last year, was specifically looking for Oliver Jeffers books, but they didn't have any. So when I saw this, I was so happy, and of course, I had to buy this. This is a story about an imaginary friend named Fred, and Oliver Jeffers has this illustration style that you will know even without even without reading, that it's by Oliver Jeffers. And I love how it was illustrated, and that the imaginary friend named Fred was illustrated with dots, and he looks like he's, yeah, see through and imaginary. So this is one of my favorite purchase. And yes, I always look inside the dust jacket. Most of Oliver Jeffers' book has this embossed or debossed illustration on the cover. This next book that I got is filled with 6 pages of paper cut pages. I basically bought this for the paper cut pages because I recently got a Cricut maker and I was brainstorming on an idea to create a picture book that has cutout pages inside. And this is a good example where there's a cutout page in front, and then at the back you'll have an illustration that would match the paper cut page in front. And I love the picture book as well because it's like it's printed using lithograph, where you print one color at a time. It's not the usual illustrations of watercolor, pen and ink, if I'm not mistaken. I think it's lithograph printing. I love the limited color palette of this picture book, the different hues of violet and blue, and it's about winter, so I think that's why the colors are limited to blue, white, and purple, and of course red. And then this next book that I got is about untranslatable words. I have always been fascinated with untranslatable words. It all started when I think a few months before I went to Japan, and I was searching for things to do, things to see, and I came upon these words that are untranslatable into any other language. And words like komorebi, wabi-sabi. So from there, I started researching on different untranslatable words, and that is where the love of these words came, because I find it really fascinating that some countries and some languages have this embedded culture in them, and they have words that describe them that doesn't translate into any other language. And then this next book that I got is about Plum the dog, and this one is also a fun book because it is written and narrated and probably also illustrated by a dog based on the story. It's a journal of Plum the dog, and it tells her everyday story with her family, with her friends, and with Emma. Emma is a writer. It's based out of Emma's real life. So Plum's parents' name is Emma, and Emma is the writer of Plum Dog. If you're familiar with Samantha Dion Baker on Instagram, where she illustrates daily about simple, ordinary things on her everyday life, it's the same book, but it's a dog version. These next two books that I got is by Chris Riddell. I'm not familiar with Chris Riddell as an author, I already know of him as an illustrator. I have one of his books in collaboration with Neil Gaiman, and I love his illustrations. So when I saw this in one of the tables in the Big Bad Wolf book sale, I just have to get it. I love Chris Riddell's illustration style. I love that it is filled with all these details, like this page with all the details of the Goth estate, and then look at the details on the characters. And while reading this book, I was thinking that I cannot even imagine these characters on my own. I don't know how illustrators like Chris Riddell would come up with characters with so much detail and story and emotions. And this one is my favorite, the free teeny tiny weeny book that comes with a book. And it's not bigger than the palm of my hand. And if you look at the details on each of these characters and the emotions, and it's printed on this tiny booklet but with so much emotions. Look at the emotion of that hound, of this character. It is so vivid and endearing. Like, look at all those lines that encapsulates the character and the emotions that the character is feeling. And look at that smile and the eyes, and look at the eyes of this, like, curly, angry, not really angry but thinking of something. I love how Chris Riddell translates the pages of a book, the pages or the texts in a book, into illustrations. And I think he's one of those top illustrators that I look up to. This is the second book that I got. It's the same series from the Goth Girl and still illustrated by Chris Riddell. And look at the green foiling on the side of the pages. I just love the details on the cover of the pages with the gold foiling and the shiny details on the character on the cover page. And like on the previous book, I just love all the details and the emotions on each of the characters. And each page would have 2 or 3 illustrations on them. And when I look on one of the pages and then after a while I get back and look at it again, I would see details that I haven't seen a while back or when I first saw it, because all the illustrations have so much details in them that whenever you look at them, some other time you'd see some details that you haven't seen there before. Look at the eyes of that lion cub. And of course, this is my favorite part of the book. It's the teeny tiny weeny book inside. And this one is The Fable of a Fawn. It's a character from the book that came with this tiny book. I just love that this book is so small and with just 12 pages. It is filled with amazing illustrations with all the details that Chris Riddell is known for. And I also particularly love that it's a silent book and it's a story linking Chronicles of Narnia with his own story. If you're familiar with Chronicles of Narnia, there's the fawn and the lion and the wardrobe. And look at this illustration of the lion crying. I love the background color, the green background color. I love the background color in these as well, the blue and the yellow. And I love that it links from his book to the Chronicles of Narnia. I don't know why. I'm not really familiar with Chris Riddell's work, but I'm going to look into it. And of course, a lamppost. So these are the two Goth Girl books that I got from the Big Bad Wolf. I love the cover. I love the foil details. And I love the illustrations. I mean, Chris Riddell would be one of my top 10 illustrators that I look up to. This next book that I got is entitled Have You Seen Elephant? So it's about the character playing hide and seek with an elephant. I love the colors. I love how it was rendered. I love the textures, and I love the story as well because it is difficult to hide an elephant. I love the colors that were used on this book, and I love that it doesn't have any hard lines on the illustration compared to Chris Riddell, which is mainly black and white, but I love all the details on Chris Riddell's illustrations. Compared to this one, it's softer. It's the colors are more washed out. It's not as bright as the colors on Chris Riddell's tiny book, but I love how this was illustrated. And I love the shadows and the light and shadows that were used in this. I'm not very good at lights and shadows, so this would be a nice book to browse through when I need some inspiration on how to do lights and colors. This next book that I got is illustrated by Suzy Lee. I'm not very familiar with Suzy Lee's work, but recently I went to this secondhand bookshop and I found several of her books, and I bought those books, which will be in another video. And I was so happy because I saw this in Big Bad Wolf. It's a collaboration. It's not just an illustration by Suzy Lee, because most of the time, most of Suzy Lee's books are silent or quiet books, and this one, it has text on them, which was authored by Richard Jackson. And I love that the illustration progressed from just purely black and white and gray into this full color page at the end. And by now, you know me, after 20 minutes of watching this video, that I am very fond of sketchy illustrations that are not lined perfectly, that are not colored perfectly. It's perfect for me in a way that even though it's sketchy and it's not perfect, it looks beautiful. This next one is a fun book about I don't draw, I color. And I was lucky enough to get a book that was signed by the author. And I'm familiar with Felicity Salad because I follow her on Instagram, and I knew when I saw this book that I have to have it. It's the same concept as the previous Suzy Lee book, where at the beginning it was all black and white because it's a story about colors, and eventually the character was in full color at the very end of the book. This book is one of my favorites. It's not a picture book, it's a book about picture books, and not just picture books, but pop up books and interactive books as well. So it's a compilation of different children's picture books, and I'm so happy that I got this because it would give me ideas on what materials to use, how to lay out pages of a book. It's not a how-to step-by-step designing a picture book. It would just give you an idea on the reason behind why they use the material, the reason behind the size, the reason why they added flaps to the book or pop-up to the books, and I just love looking into the ideas behind the creation of each of the illustrated book that was included here. I can browse through this book and get some ideas on different interactive books, like having flaps or pop-ups or inserts or different kinds of pockets that are on some of the pages. So this will be an idea book, and this one is my favorite page. It's a pop-up book of different cities, and I love the color palette. There are different illustrators featured here, and you can get a lot of inspiration from different illustration styles and different sizes of the book, and you can get some ideas on textures and how pages are folded and colors as well. And of course, these are my favorite pages on the book. It's a book by Oliver Jeffers. I have this same book on my collection. It's for another video. I didn't know that Oliver Jeffers is part of the illustrators and author featured in this book, and I was pleasantly surprised that there are 2 pages about Oliver Jeffers. There's even a Harry Potter page. And this is the last but definitely not the least book that I got on the second day that I went there. I was so happy that I found this. It's a book by Tonka House. It reminds me of that Ghibli aesthetic, and I love the illustrations. I love the layout, and I love how soft the illustrations are. I love the textures. I love Tonka House in general, and I'm looking forward into building this collection of Tonka House picture books. And look at all those shades and lights. So that's it. These are all the books that I got, and I still have several books that I need to take a video of. And it took me quite a while to finish this book because I had to narrate and I had to think about what I need to say. I'm not very talkative in person, so this is a huge deal for me to be talking non-stop, but at least this one I can edit. Thank you for watching.